Hello! One of my most popular videos is how to learn all of the notes on the fingerboard quickly and easily, and I'll put a little link to that at the top. And because it's a popular video, lots of people have commented and got in touch and asked questions. And one of the most common questions is, why would I want to learn all the notes on the fingerboard? Particularly if I am a strummer. If I strum chords and sing maybe, would I really need to learn all the notes on the fingerboard? In this video, I'm going to tell you why it's a very good idea and show you how you can use that knowledge to help you play all over the fingerboard. So if you're a melody player, maybe you play from tablature, or maybe you know how to read music already. Maybe you learnt another instrument, maybe you learnt the piano at school or the trumpet or the flute, and you know how to read music. Well, in those cases, knowing where the notes are on the fingerboard is incredibly useful. If you can read music and you know where the notes are, then you'll be able to play from any sheet music that there is. Even if you play from tablature rather than musical notation, it's still really useful because tablature isn't really very musical. It just tells you where to put your fingers. It doesn't really describe the music. Which means that if you don't know the notes that are happening when you're playing tablature, what can happen is that you end up blindly following the tablature. And a lot of tablature on the internet, believe it or not, isn't 100% accurate. But if you know the notes that should be happening, you could correct that tablature. You could fix it and go, actually, that's not right. I know it should be a C sharp, not a C. And you can alter that tablature and fix it. But if you're someone who is more interested in strumming chords, this is why learning the notes on the fingerboard is a very, very useful thing to do. Let's take a look at some chords. Let's try a C chord, one that you've no doubt played many, many times. And then we'll have a look at a D chord, where we're going to bar the second fret and put our little finger on the 5th fret of the A string, the first string. Okay, now let's have a look at an E chord, where we bar the 4th fret and put our little finger on the 7th fret of the first string. Can you see that this E chord and this D chord and this C chord are all exactly the same shape? The C is a bit of a red herring, but if you imagine the nut here is replacing our index finger, if I put my index finger on the nut, I can play a C, I can play a D, I can play an E. How do I know where to put them? And why is that a D? And why is that an E? And what's that one? And any of the others? First of all, we need to talk about where we get the names for these chords from. Every chord is a collection of notes, but one of the notes we call the root note. And the root note is simply the letter name of the note that we use to give the letter name of the chord. So the root note in a C chord is the note of C. And the root note in an F chord is the note of F. And it doesn't matter if it's an F minor or a G sharp 7 flat 9. That letter name is the note that we call the root note within that chord. If we can find the root note in a shape, we know what string it's on. Then we can move that shape, if we know where the notes are on the fingerboard, so that that same string has the new root note of the chord we want to find. Like this. This C chord here, where's the root note in that C chord? Well, actually, there are two. We have our open C string, that's the note of C, but we also have a C on our first string that we're holding down at the 3rd fret there. That's a C. Great, we have two root notes in this chord. If I turn that into a movable shape by playing it with my little finger and putting my barred finger across the nut, so I've not moved up yet, I've just got into a new position. If I move that up, the root note is going to move up along the C string, and it's also going to move up along the A string. If I know any of the notes on the C string or the A string, I can place this shape on those notes to get a new chord. So if I move that one up to the 2nd fret, if I happen to know that the 2nd fret of my C string is the note of D, or if I happen to know that the 5th fret of my A string is also a D, I now know that that is a D. And no surprise, at the 4th fret, the 4th fret of my C string is an E. And the 7th fret of my A string here is also an E. So those root notes describe that chord. Now because I've not changed the shape, the chord won't magically change from major to minor to 7th. If I start with a C major chord, it's always going to be a major chord. We'll look at some other types in a moment. So that means the ones that we haven't played before, so we barred the 2nd fret and the 4th fret to get D and E. What about the 3rd fret? What would that be? Well, if I know that that note there on the 3rd fret of the C string is an E flat, and I know that the 6th fret of my A string is an E flat, or if I know either of those, then that chord is an E flat. I don't have to memorize where to put all of these shapes and learn them all because I've already memorized the notes on the fingerboard. I already know where they are. Now don't worry if you don't know these notes yet, because I have a whole video that helps you learn these ones. And that was the link I put up at the beginning, and I've put it in the description below. This is to try and show you how knowing those is really going to help your chord playing. So let's try a chord that's got just one root note, not 2 strings, just 1 string, and it's on a different string. The chord of F. So if you play an F chord, just a 2-finger F like that, the note of F is here under your index finger. And of course, if you know the notes on the fingerboard, you'll know that's an F. So what if we make that into a movable shape? And to do that, I have to leave my first finger spare, and I have to play the F with those 2 fingers instead, because this one is going to bar across the strings. So that one's going to go where the nut is on my ukulele now. If I move that up, then wherever this finger is now my 2nd finger, because I've shifted everything along, wherever I am on the 2nd string, whatever note that is, this chord will be named after that note. So F, F sharp, G, G sharp or A flat, A, etc. I don't have to count up the neck. I don't have to go about memorizing these. I already know because I just look down and go, where's that finger on that string? That's the chord I'm playing. Now I said we'd look at other types of chords. Every chord, regardless of the type of chord, major, minor, 7th, diminished, whatever, has a root note. So if we do a C7 like this, the root note to a C7 is a C. Now we had 2 root notes before because we doubled up the C, but now we're playing a C7, we only have 1 note of C, and that's our open C string. That means every time something looks like that shape, all I have to do is look to the C string for the root. If I make it movable by putting my finger across the nut, ready to move up, and I use my 2nd finger to play the 1st fret, that's my C7, and the C is on the C string, that's the root note. I can slide that up, and whatever note I'm playing on the C string is the root. You probably know this one. At the 2nd fret, that's our barred D7 shape. And it's a D7 because the C string, the 3rd string, has the note of D. That's where our root note lives on that chord. That means I can slide that anywhere. Let's put it somewhere random. I don't know what that chord is. What's the fret that I'm barring? It's the 6th fret. And I happen to know that the 6th fret on the C string is an F sharp. So that makes that an F sharp 7. Why 7? Because I started with the 7th chord and I haven't changed the shape. Here's the important thing to remember. The shape gives the chord its type, its flavour. The shape is what makes the major, minor, 7, 13 flat 9, whatever it happens to be. That's the shape. Where you put the shape, that gives it its letter name, and that's what's happening here. That shape is always going to be a 7th chord because we started off with a C7. We haven't changed the shape. But once we've found out where the root note is, the note that the chord is named after, what string it's on, then all we have to do is find the note we're looking for on that same string, and we'll have a new 7th chord, and we haven't had to memorize where to put it because we've already done all the hard work learning the notes on the fingerboard. Now that's just one reason. It's a very good reason, but that's just one reason why chord players can really benefit from learning the note names on the fingerboard, but there are others. For example, and there's another video which I've got a link down below too as well, where I talk about unlocking the fingerboard using chord shapes. Well, if you can unlock the fingerboard using chord shapes, you can also reverse engineer that, and if you know the fingerboard already, you can learn chord shapes rather than using chord shapes to learn the fingerboard. What I mean by that is, once you start to know what notes make a chord, if you can look down at your fingerboard and see where all of those notes are, then you can play chord shapes that no one has ever written down for you or ever shown you. If you know that a C chord has the notes of C, E and G in it, and you can look at your fingerboard and you know it so well that you can just visualize where all those C's, E's and G's are, then you can start playing C chord shapes that no one has ever shown you, that you've never seen written down in one of those little diagrams. You can play a C, you can play a C, you can play a C, you play a C, you play a C. They're all C's, E's and G's, and if you know where those are, then you can work out as many different chord inversions as you want without having to keep memorizing shapes. You simply pick out the notes you want. So I hope I've convinced you that knowing the note names on the fingerboard is a really useful thing, even if you're not interested in playing melodies. I hope this has helped, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.